there's that bit of lyrics there. What you own is your own kingdom. What you do is your own glory. What you love is your own power. What you live is your own story. That is the 2112 story right there. And those are just four lines of lyrics that I have taken for myself as this is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to live my life.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Senich. Before we get started, if you want to hear these episodes commercial-free and support the podcast, grab the Backstage Pass on Patreon for just $5 a month. Absolutely commercial-free. The link's in the show notes, or you can go to bookedonrock.com. Now on to our guest, one of my favorite guests, Daniel Bukszpan. I'm not saying that because you're here. I truly mean that.
You can say it because I'm here. That's okay. I don't mind.
He is back this time to talk about his brand new book, and I got it right here, Rush and 2112, 50 Years. How's it going, Daniel? Good to see you again.
It's going well. I'm really excited for this book, actually. So I'm sort of like, raring to go.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. And boy, what a time it is for a Rush fan. Who knew that in the year 2026 we'd be talking about an upcoming tour by Rush, but that is the case.
Or that there would be a Grace Under Pressure box set released 3 days later. All of that timing, I feel it is very important to say, we had nothing to do with it. We were planning to release this now, having no idea anything was in the works with those guys at all.
Gotcha. So it wasn't a marketing thing, like let's line it up with the tour.
Oh no, I mean now we'll say, oh yeah, absolutely, there's according to plan. But no, we didn't orchestrate any of that, and this was just one of those things where we just kind of got lucky that it turned out the way that it did.
Sure.
But no, we had nothing to do with it at all.
Well, we're going to talk all about the book, but let's just get this out there right now. What are your thoughts about the tour, Rush returning with Annika Niles on drums? You are a hardcore fan, so I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say.
I am not only a hardcore fan, but I was on this very show a couple of years ago saying they will never get together.
Yeah.
It's over. They will never reunite. You will never see them perform again, ever. And now here we are.
Sure. Nobody expected this.
No. I mean, really, when I did Rush at 50, my previous Rush title from 2024, the consensus among, everyone I talked to, who all worked with the band and everything was like, it's done. They are done. And they seemed done to me, but I knew that like the way the last tour had ended was, I knew it was not to everyone's liking. Mainly Geddy's liking, because I think he wanted to keep going. He's said so in the press. And just when I heard about this, I read the statement that they made about why they were doing it. And if you will pardon my French, one of the things that they said was, "We really fucking miss it," playing live. And when I saw that, I was like, that's exactly the right reason to be doing this. And, and when they're talking about that this will be a trip, this is really the real tribute to Neil, in my view. And it has the full support of his family and everything. It's everything is kind of squared away where it needs to be, in my opinion. And, there are a lot of people I know saying no Neil, no Rush, and they will not go, on that basis. There was a Rush album already before Neil, so it existed before him. Rush, really the foundation of it is Alex and Geddy meeting in grammar school and bonding, and they've just always had that relationship, and it's always been very close, very tight. They're really, BFFs, and I know the band ending the way that it did, and then them having to keep Neil's illness a secret for as long as they did, was just really hard, I'm sure, on both of them. Now some time has passed, and it's been 11 years since their last concert. And to me, just, I look at all of it, I take in the totality of it, and it seems to me like they're doing all of this for the right reasons. The ticket prices are insane, and that certainly is an issue. And anyone who wants to complain about that, I, I got you. Absolutely.
Okay, because I want to go see him when they come to Connecticut. Are we talking like Springsteen territory here, like that high?
It's from I know someone. I live in New York City. One of my friends from here is going to see them in Philadelphia because they can't afford what the tickets are. And part of that is just New York is very expensive. But yeah, I mean it's pricey, no doubt.
Okay.
But at the same time, that's the market right now, and that's I'm not sure how much of that is really in their control anyway. But there is a lot of grumbling about the ticket prices, and that I yeah I have no issue with complaining about that. That's for sure.
I'd like to do an episode on get somebody from the inside to really explain that process. Whose fault is it, or whose responsibility is it as to why these ticket prices are high? Is it the artist? Is it the promoter?
You better do that soon. You better do that soon because Kid Rock said he's about to fix it.
Oh, really? Is that what he said?
Yeah,
Okay.
he and President Trump are going to fix it.
Okay.
So don't worry.
All right. Well, listen, I'll count on that. I'm gonna go see him when they come to Connecticut. Very excited about that. But yeah, let's talk about this book right here. And I figured I'd wait until you were on before I officially remove it from this gorgeous sleeve. Look at that, huh?
From a
Look at
chief.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go, right in the screen. So yeah, you talk about in the introduction to the book about this album being the one where Rush discovered their identity. 3 albums before this, 2 with Neil Peart. Talk about what was happening with Rush before 2112 and what made this album so crucial to their future.
Well, I mean, in the lead up to it, they started out as this band that a lot of people really kind of compared just to just Led Zeppelin. And then Neil comes in and that changes everything quite a bit. It's much more progressive, but it's still very much has a foot in hard rock. And then the third album, Caressive Steel, is the one where it gets a lot more progressive. And I think they lost some people with that who just didn't quite get what they were doing. I would also say that, that album does have some flaws that make it a little inaccessible to some people who aren't already fans. But to me, 2112 is where they just completely straightened it all out, figured out exactly how to present everything. And I would say it's very hard when you listen to that album to hear any influences. I hear The Who a little bit, Tommy specifically. But for the most, the albums leading up to that, you can hear some of the influences, certainly on the debut, you hear a lot of Jimmy Page coming from Alex Lifeson. And the next 2 albums, you can still hear kind of what they grew up on and what they were playing in bars and that sort of thing. 2112 is like, okay, we're out of finishing school now, and this is who we are. And it's a real statement and a really clear statement. And, I think if anyone had any issues with their music before that, I think it was that it was a little less coherent of a package, maybe. And again, it's no disrespect to those albums because I love those albums. Caressive Steel was massive for me when I heard it. But I can understand how it's not for everybody. 2112, somehow they figured it out, and they were able, in figuring out, to make that the first thing you have to do is listen to the longest song on the album, which for a lot of people would be a barrier. But for that album, for whatever reason, it's exactly right to start with that.
That was my next question is how does an album without a hit single, it's not remotely commercial, but it's their biggest seller. The music is brilliant, but conventional record label wisdom would say Yeah, that's great, but without a hit single, nobody's going to know about it. How does an album built around a 20-minute suite become their breakthrough instead of their downfall?
Well, the mighty Donna Halper, to whom I owe a great deal because she allowed me to interview her for both of these books. And for those who don't know, she's basically the woman who discovered them. She was a Cleveland DJ. She plays Working Man. The rest is history. And she was at Mercury at the time when they were making 2112. She was at that label. And she said that she remembered at one point, because the what was really coming down from the top was these guys need a single. And she did some market research to show that there were these bands at the time like Black Sabbath and Genesis who were, getting out there and people were buying their records and going to their concerts and everything, even though they didn't have a hit single. This was still kind of a new-ish concept at the time that you could get across with an album. Even though we'd already had Led Zeppelin 4, it was still not necessarily the way things were done. And she was saying a lot of Mercury pushing hard for a single was not necessarily them being mad at Rush, which is how the story kind of gets portrayed a lot over the years. It's just they wanted a single from everybody. Everybody on the label, they wanted a single. And the band that consistently gave them that was Bachman Turner Overdrive, who was also on the label, and just every record had one.
Oh, yeah. Cranked out the
Uh,
singles, yeah.
yeah, and the expectation is like that every artist on the label also should do the same. So Rush were not, they weren't like the story goes, that they were like singled out a little bit, and the label was like, give us a single, give us a single. And Donna was saying that's really not, yes, they wanted a single, absolutely. Yes, they wanted the record to sell, absolutely. But she also said there were a lot of people at the label who really were working very hard on Rush's behalf and really understood what they were doing, and wanted them to succeed on their terms. She mentioned Cliff Bernstein, who manages Metallica now. But he was at Mercury at the time and he loved them. He loved Caress of Steel. He loved 2112. He totally got it. And for her, it was just very important to say that there were people at the label at the time who were really trying to do right by them and really trying to help them. And the lore of Mercury as, the corporate Goliath against little David. Yes, they wanted a single. Yes. But that's a kind of simplistic characterization of what the story was, because there were a lot of good people there trying to help, and I'm glad I got to put some of the names in the book too, because they're not people who are known.
The album dedicated to Ayn Rand, the novelist and polarizing philosopher whose stories often featured a lone creator standing against a conformist society. Many rock critics leaned left and interpreted this as ideological alignment. Did the controversy help create the fiercely loyal Rush fan identity we still see today?
Well, the critics just always hated them until the 90s. So we're talking like the first 20 years that they're together, just they got zero respect from anybody, and people said all kinds of horrible things about them all the time. So I think by the time like they got to getting in trouble with New Music Express in 1978, like they were kind of already old hands at people saying they were the worst thing in the world and this is terrible, and so on and so forth. But there was a New Music Express profile in 1978 that said they were fascists because of the Ayn Rand connection. And I don't know necessarily what the immediate impact of that was in terms of how Rush are perceived, but I have to say that, at least in my opinion, the constant negativity that they were subjected to on a daily basis from every critic on earth probably had the effect for them as a band of helping them like really circle the wagons and, stick tight to each other. And it did the same thing for the fans, where the fans, I think, became even more protective of them and were even more like, because my band has been attacked, I love them even more now. I think that's what a lot of the critics didn't realize is they were kind of unwittingly making the band more beloved and making their popularity deeper and by calling them fascists.
Strengthen them even more.
Yeah, sometimes, hey, as the great Eric Adams once said, that great philosopher, all my haters become my waiters when I sit at the table of success. And, Rush had so many haters. Oh my God, still to this day. But in a way, I feel like that kind of helped them, and that kind of became part of their image. And if anything, it certainly made the fans more dedicated and more, sort of like we need to help, we need to protect these guys. And I don't think they would have gotten into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame without these absolutely diehard, ride or die fans writing letters every day to get them in there. You don't just get that kind of a fan base. It's like that takes time, and it took a very long time for them to get in. But if you watch that footage of them getting inducted, and Jan Wenner of Rolling Stone is up there trying to talk, and everyone is just booing him. I mean, it was kind of this moment of like, okay, fine, the rock establishment must, after like 40 years, acknowledge, fine, this band from Toronto, it's Rush, fine. The fans pushed that, and the fans were always the ones who got them over the finish line.
Yeah, it's a great story. Yeah, and Rush and Kiss toured together early on. Kiss is a very similar story, different
Totally,
band
yeah.
musically, but same thing.
People hated them.
Yeah.
I was on another one of these like last week, I think, and the guy was talking about how if he's about the same age I am, and that when he was a teenager, if he was seen in his Kiss t-shirt, like he really caught a lot of crap for it. And it was like really, yeah, but then you look at Kiss today and you would never know they broke up. They're still selling merchant, people still love them. People are still buying the pinball machine and the Kiss coffin and all of that stuff.
I think I have that downloaded, by the way. Was it mixtapes?
Oh yeah.
There you go. I got to listen to it.
Very good. Okay.
See,
Yeah, it was,
see, I'm
yeah,
a fan.
more.
I'm a fan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I follow you.
No, but I mean that's what he was. That's
But it's
what
true.
he was
Yeah.
telling.
Yeah. Kiss fans were, especially around 1979, 1980, 81. If you're a Kiss fan, forget it. One other name we got to mention is Terry Brown. You write that the story of 2112, really the story of Rush's association with him, the co-producer. What made that relationship so pivotal at that exact moment?
Well, when I talked to him, he said that, I mean, he knew that they were, having some tension with the label, and that like the last tour hadn't gone that well and they were not in the best place. But he said like he didn't really think about that when they were making the record. And to him, the process was the same as everything they had done before that, where the guys came in, very well prepared, absolutely knowing what they wanted to do. And everyone I've ever talked to who worked with them said they were the most prepared band you were ever going to work with. But they came in with basically finished songs, and his job was to kind of like coax out of them the best performance of it. And he wasn't really that concerned with like, let's make an album that'll, make people at Mercury happy. Let's make an album, but he just wasn't concerned about that at all. He was very much like, no, you guys do what you do, and I believe in you, and I'm here to help you maximize what you do. And he said that he knew those guys maybe were a little worried about how it was going to be received, but he was like, I thought they just nailed it totally.
Yeah, you said they were in a fragile state heading into the studio at that point.
Yeah, but he had like just total confidence in them and was sure they would get it right, and they did. And but I mean, he never needed any convincing about them in the first place. He said, like, pretty much from the minute he heard them, when he was approached to mix the debut, just right, he was like, oh my God, and then I heard, the Rickenbacker and Getty's voice, and I just never heard anything like it. It was, so he got it immediately. And, so, some people with Rush get it immediately, and he was one of them. And, he just wasn't concerned about any of the music industry stuff at all. And he was really just about the art and the craft, and let's just make a great record. And that's exactly what they did.
Here's another name, Hugh Syme. The illustrator Hugh Syme created the album cover for 75's Caress of Steel, his first time working for the group. And then the cover that he submitted, let's get into the how the concept for this came together, because the cover he submitted to Mercury Records, it went under some modifications. They took his original, it was a silver design, kind of a sleek silver design, and it had all kinds of brown in there. What happened with that, and how do we get to the iconic cover we see now?
Oh, what happened with that was that he didn't know, and the band didn't know, that at the time the label could just step in and decide, oh, this cover you submitted, we're worried it's not going to really move a lot of units, so we're just going to change everything. So when the record shipped, that was the first time those guys saw what the cover of Caress of Steel looked like, and it was just not at all what they submitted. So the contract was then changed so that any artwork that was going to go to press, Hugh Syme had to be present at the factory to approve it before they, press the button on the conveyor belt to print it. And they've been very protective about, making sure that what gets out there is what they intend. And that, I think that was a really big part of it too. Like, that was a big part of, okay, the label has certain things that they can do that might, sort of muck up our vision and make it difficult for us to get across what we're trying to do. So we need to just make sure, we're the last word on our music and on how we present it. And, so the next thing then to benefit from that was the 2112 album cover, which, the design on that, Hugh compared it to their Playboy bunny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and that just became, yeah.
That's the one showing it on the screen.
And that's been it for the last 50 years. And, I mean, he's, certainly when he designed it, he had no idea, obviously, that 50 years later, we'd be like, yeah, it's their Playboy bunny. It's just, because you don't make decisions like that. But he said that he just listened to the lyrics that Neil had written, and the artwork that was really just kind of came from that. And he was just sort of inspired by, to really boil it down, the simple story of, like, the individual against society. And so he just made images that kind of reflected that. And it ended up being this timeless classic, where I think if you sat down and said, I'm going to draw a timeless classic now, you can't just make that,
Yeah, that's
the public has to see it that way.
This is so cool about this story. A lot of these things are just happening all at the right time, right place, right time. Things just all falling into place for Rush. All right, so let's get into the concept. And you lead the chapter on the album concept with, quote, so what the hell was the 2112 story about anyway? So for somebody hearing it for the first time, what is the core story Rush are telling in 2112?
Well, it is the year 2112, 50 years after a intergalactic war. And the planet Megadon, or that might be the city, I'm sorry, Megadon, apologies, is basically under the tyrannical rule of the priests of the temples of Syrinx, who dictate basically everything. basically it's modeled after Soviet Russia, where, there was, state-sanctioned art, state-sanctioned music. The state gave you your job. You didn't really have much choice in anything that happened. And Ayn Rand was from that, that's how she came up. And so she was naturally distrustful of that sort of thing. And she wrote a story that Neil felt he should acknowledge because it was like thematically similar. But if you read the novella that it's based on, which is called Anthem, and which they took for their label name,
And there's a song anthem.
and and that has some of the most Randian lyrics you're ever going to hear. But he felt like, but I'm doing this story of like the individual against the state, and I should just credit her because that's sort of where I got the idea from. But the stories are not really the same. Uh, the Ayn Rand story goes way off in this other direction. But one of the things I like so much about the 2112 suite and that I think is so great is that in the lyrics, they don't really they don't really get into a lot of detail about everything that's going on in this kind of like police state. They leave a lot of that up to your imagination. And furthermore, there's diary entries from the narrator of the story that are not in the music. You have to read them, and they go along with the songs. But even with all that, it still leaves you, the listener, with some wiggle room in imagining a lot of it. He leaves a lot of it up to you to put together even the ending, which to me sounds like the end of the world. A lot of people have interpreted as a positive ending, an optimism, but they don't really tell you. And Neil, in the way he wrote the lyrics and all of it, it's not just beating you over the head with like they still are leaving a lot of it up to you to interpret it the way you want to.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I mean that to me, that's just the mark of a great storyteller.
Hmm.
To say nothing of a great lyricist and a great musician and all. Just having the idea of like, let's not be totally explicit about everything. Let's let the listener let their mind work a little bit in this too. Uh,
Well, who or what do the priests of the temples of Syrinx represent?
I think that they just are basically a symbol of authority. And whoever you are and whatever you're doing in life, there will always be someone trying to push you around and tell you what to do. That can be the state, or that can be your mother, that can be your girlfriend. There's always someone somewhere in your life who wants to be an authority and tell you what to do.
Hmm.
And really, for me, the priests are just a stand-in for that. And really, the theme is just about being yourself, the individual, despite what's going on in the world around you, and not being distracted by all that, and being authentically yourself.
Is the hero discovering music really about art or individuality itself?
Well, I mean, again, it's both. He discovers this thing. He thinks it's wonderful. Oh my God, I cannot wait to show them this strange device that I have found. He thinks it's wonderful. The state does not. And so right there's tension between what he as an individual wants and what he is allowed to want. Though there's one thing in the story Anthem that I thought was great, where if you want something that's different from what the state wants from you, they call it a transgression of preference. So like they would pick out a spouse for you who you're supposed to mate with for life.
Wow.
But in the story, he falls in love with this other woman. And to the state, that's a transgression of preference, which is that's wild. That's but if you've ever had anyone, uh, you know, sor- if you've ever had someone like say something kind of crappy to you, and you respond with like, "That's not cool. Don't say that to me. How can you talk that way to me?" And they go like, "What? You're too sensitive."
Oh yeah.
It's kind of, in a way, the priests of the temples of Syrinx are the forces of gaslighting in some ways.
Wow.
They're the
Okay.
ultimate narcissistic abuser in some ways. And the theme, for me is, okay, then how do you function authentically as an individual in the face of that? The story is left up to you enough that you can make a more sort of individual interpretation like that. Where if it was more explicit, I don't know if I could say that. But they leave enough room for the listener's interpretation that you can come away with pretty much anything. Like I'm at culinary school, and my teacher says I use too much red pepper. I love red pepper. There's any context you want, where there's someone trying to tell you what to do. That is a very compelling 20 minutes of music.
Are there colleges that have classes or courses on this album? There should be.
No,
I mean, you
although
could.
there's one guy named Darrell Bowman who wrote his master's thesis on the music of Rush. And I was really surprised that he's like there's a few people who have done that. And I think their music absolutely would hold up in any kind of an academic setting
Oh,
myself.
absolutely. Yes.
But
Absolutely.
the problem is the respect problem and the this music isn't cool problem, and why can't you people listen to Bob Dylan problem? Because Rush are not cool.
I was about
So
to say though, you could study this music or these lyrics every bit as much as you can study Bob Dylan's. It's just a totally
100%.
totally
Yeah.
different subject matter, but still as just as brilliant and fascinating. How much of the story reflects the mindset of Rush at that moment in their career?
Oh, they've always said that, the reason, and, they think like part of the reason the album came out as well as it did is, because they did feel like the story sort of reflected what they were going through. Uh, you know, like I said earlier, maybe a little too much has been made of the record company being the priests of the temples of Syrinx to them. But, I mean, if you're an artist, you want to make art the way you want to make it. And then when someone comes along to say, we need you to change this about it so we can sell it, for a lot of creative people, that that's a real problem. They have real issues with that. I don't, because I have no ethics and no morals. But for a lot of artists, it's like they're going to make what they're going to make, and they do
Sure.
not take kindly to being told you need to change this. And they certainly don't take kindly to having the record cover changed unilaterally by the label. But they've said in the past, part of why the album worked as well as it did is because it really aligned with what they were going through at the time. Alex Lifeson called it their protest album. And it's angry. It's an angry album. You can hear that in it, and I think that's also part of why it connects as well as it does, where the previous three maybe hadn't, is because it just really jumps off the vinyl. You can really feel it.
It's genuine.
Uh, yeah, and it just comes across as authentically emotional and like, wow, these guys are talking about real stuff. Uh, it's I could go on and on. So
Oh, hey, and I could listen to you talk about it all night. This is a fascinating topic. Daniel Bukszpan is the author of Rush and 2112, 50 Years. All right, let's get into the songs now, the music. We've talked a lot about the lyrical content. That opening suite is the centerpiece of the album. There is the influence of the Who's Tommy. You mentioned that. There are classical influences, classic Hollywood film, sci-fi TV, Twilight Zone being a big one. Is the suite written like a rock song expanded or more like a classical composition broken into movements?
a little of both. I mean, in my opinion, they probably could have gotten away with just doing it as like 7 songs, w- you know, with space between them, and like that probably would have worked. But I think what you've got there in that suite is songs sort of put together in a more sort of classical symphonic format with movements, but you are not necessarily stuck with listening to it that way. Like if you want to listen to it as like 20 minutes of great songs, that's there too, absolutely. You can totally, come away from it that way if you want to. But there's a flow to it, and there's sort of, you get the feeling as you're going through it, like, this could work as just individual songs, but there's this through line going through the whole thing that really gives it momentum. And, I mean, I don't know about you, but to me, that's like the fastest 20 minutes I've ever heard in my life, that it goes right by.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I don't feel like that's a 20-minute song at all. Maybe 6 minutes tops, but I think that just has something to do with just how well it's constructed and how well they use time and how well they use the space between the songs and just all just it's just so expertly made that it's really hard to come up to come up with 20 minutes where you want to hear the whole thing. Even if you're talking about just a regular record, think of how many records you have where you've got side one, five songs, two of them are good, you know. So even just in that alone of having, one album side of music that you don't want to skip anything, that already is a little amazing that they accomplished that, but that it feels like a consistent story that you're sort of brought along with the whole time. That I mean, you're not going to get too many of those from anybody. Even Yes could only manage, I think, two of those, and they specialized in 20-minute songs.
The Booked on Rock podcast is part of the Boneless Podcasting Network. If you're a fan of classic rock and classic film like I am, go to boneless.lovable.app to find over 20 great shows there. That's boneless.lovable.app, or just go to bookedonrock.com, the Boneless Podcasting Network. It is what you want it to be. Listen with confidence. You right quoted from Mercury Records wanted a single off of 2112, a standalone 45 RPM featuring just the Temples of Syrinx. Might have done the job nicely. I believe that was released as a single with Twilight Zone. Those are the two singles.
I think it was together with Overture.
Yeah.
Which like honestly, if you want to get the point across about that record, that Overture Temples of Syrinx is probably a good way, if you want to just or give someone orientation.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Did that isolation help introduce listeners to the band? Did it strip away the context of the whole piece? But I don't think so.
I don't know how much singles at that time really did them any good, I mean, because I think most of the audience for that record they walked into the record store, they saw that cool cover, and they were like, I want to listen to the whole thing. And it rewarded listening to the whole thing. And I don't know that, I mean, I've always just been very skeptical about the idea that they ever needed singles. And they didn't even really have one until New World Man in 1982. But even that, like, they put it out as a single, like kind of because they had to, and it was under 4 minutes, and sure, why not? And it ended up working. But they never wrote music that way, and they never wrote music like, here's the single. And it wasn't just Temples of Syrinx. I mean, Mercury tried to, I put it in the book, they made this sampler for radio called Everything You Ever Wanted to Play by Rush But Were Afraid to. I think that was what the title was. And it was like all their most like sort of radio friendly songs. I don't know that it did them a bit of good, because they really just built their reputation on the road and with these very interesting albums that were good all the way through. And I don't know that they really attracted a singles audience. Like I don't think that's what the audience wanted.
Yeah, maybe in the 80s more.
Well, that's MTV, if you want my honest opinion, and that's a whole that's a whole separate thing. But yeah, I mean MTV for a lot of artists, they said that basically had the effect of making them write singles that they had to also attach a very expensive movie to. I don't know how much good that did them either, you know. Although I will say I discovered Rush because of the video for Just an Early Warning. So
Wow, really? Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Well, and FM rock radio embraced Rush. I mean, they
yeah,
always supported the band. At least I know growing up around here in Connecticut, they played Rush all the time. Still do.
yeah, but it never had anything to do with singles that they might have released. In fact, I could see, you know, some coked up DJ looking at side one. It's like, oh wow, all of 2112 is 20 minutes. I can do a lot of blow in the bathroom while this is playing, you know. But you know,
Exactly.
I mean, I guess you're old enough to remember when radio stations would play perfect album sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
I myself played it as a DJ. We used to do it a
oh
lot. You
yeah,
know, we used to do a lot. Yeah. Yeah. We used to do longest to shortest song in 2112. I'd be on Friday nights, 6 p.m. was the start of my shift. And we would start off the weekend with my shift. And there it was, 2112. I'm like, not complaining there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's not laziness on the part of the DJ to put that on. It's like that's just good music that people want to hear. It is a perfect album side, just as it is, you know, as they present it. I don't know that that song specifically led to FM radio stations playing perfect albums. Like most of the time, they would play Dark Side of the Moon, is what I remember. But I'm sure it didn't hurt. And if you flip over 2112, there's another perfect album side right there. So
Well, yeah. And that's the other thing. That's where I want to go next is sometimes I forget like the whole album is a concept album. No, it's one
no,
side concept album, the first side, but then the second side, this you're right, quote, 2112 is frequently called a concept album, but that's not accurate in the strictest sense of the term. None of the 5 songs on its second side are related to the story on the first. A Passage to Bangkok, a fun contrast, counterculture humor, and epic musical inspiration. The lyrics inspired by a well-known magazine among pot smokers, while the music inspired by a Zeppelin song. Could you talk about that?
Alex Lifeson said the music was inspired by Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. And I think that song influenced a lot of musicians at the time who were like, we need our own 8 minute Middle Eastern epic, you know, like uh, Stargazer, excuse me, by Rainbow is like perfect example of something like that. You know, Passage to Bangkok is not an 8 minute, you know, it's short. It's not an 8 minute song, but uh, it's in this more, you know, it has more exotic melody and that sort of. So it presents this kind of melodic break from what was on 2112 because it doesn't really repeat what you heard there. It's in a kind of a different vein. And I feel like most of what is there on side two functions as it's sort of a tonic for listening to side one. Like you went through all that heavy stuff, you know, you internalized all these deep concepts, flip it over. Here's a song about smoking pot. Here's a song about watching TV, you know, the Twilight Zone. And it's like an answer to what was on side one. I also believe that Something for Nothing, which ends the record, in a lot of ways sort of sums up thematically what 2112 is about, because that's another song that's about what, you know, the individual against conformity, but just in 4 minute form. But it's the same idea. And they're really, in my opinion, just tying it up beautifully at the end with that. Like that's the perfect little bow that they put on it.
Yeah, and that magazine, by the way, was
High
High
Times.
Times,
Yes.
which I
Very
think is
popular
still
when
around, I think, or I don't know. Are they still around, High Times?
they shut down 2 years ago.
Oh, wow, just 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean nobody buys print magazines anymore. So,
Right.
you know,
I figured maybe they transitioned over to a website or something.
they did, but I think they for what they just had a hard time. I don't know. Everyone smokes pot now, and it's legal in a lot of places, so you don't really need high times.
Who was the big pot smoker in the band? Was it Alex?
Getty described Alex as a huge, massive pot smoker. All
Yeah.
three of them smoked, but Getty gave it up I think he said in the early 80s. And Neil, I think, gave it up around then too. I think Alex still smokes pot to this day. Uh, it- and he said like one time he did ecstasy. And so he is maybe a little bit more of a dabbler. But he also said like you can't really smoke pot and be in the studio because you're going to sound like crap and be sloppy, and you're not going to want to keep anything you record.
Right.
So I mean that yes he likes it, but he smokes responsibly,
He
I guess is
does.
what I'm trying to say.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock podcast. If you've just found the podcast, welcome. If you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. And make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and let people know about Booked on Rock. And if you do like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, give a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Booked on Rock podcast. We're on Amazon, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, and on YouTube Music. You can check out the full episodes on video, along with video highlights from episodes on the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. Find it at Booked on Rock. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. All right, Twilight Zone is one of my all-time favorite shows. I've seen every episode at least like 25, 30, if not 50 times, and maybe even more. I watch them all the time, so I can't not love this song. 2 episodes of the series provide the source material for the lyrics, which is, "Will the real Martian please stand up?" and "Stop over in a quiet town."
Yeah.
The first one, "Will the real Martian please stand up?" is one of my favorite episodes, period. How much did Rod Serling's storytelling style influence the band's lyrical approach overall, not just with this song?
They said like, the 3 of them just loved that show. And like
Anti-authority, that was big with Rod Serling.
well, he was really questioning, not just authority, but people's attitudes. Like he wanted to do a lot of stuff with racial content. And that's when he was just a script writer before he had the show. And a lot of like the networks and the higher ups they didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to go near it.
Mm-hmm.
And he lamented that because he was working in TV, and the context of that, he was not able to really take things where he wanted to, because there were just things that in 1960 people just didn't want to hear about. That they still don't want to hear about them now sometimes, but at the time it was just really restrictive.
But I love he outsmarted the television networks by placing it inside of a silly concept of like, these funny looking Martians with one eye.
Yeah.
But there was so much more to it.
Well, Gene Roddenberry did that too with Star Trek.
Right.
There's one very famous episode where there's these 2 people, and one of them, like the left side of his face is white and the right side is black. And the other person, it's reversed. And they have, just based on that, they have just hatred for each other. And, what I mean? He's talking, you don't have to dig too deep to see what he's talking about, but you had to, at that time, really kind of disguise what you were saying in order for the message to get across. Sort of like how Rob Halford had to do songs like "Eat Me Alive" to get his homoerotic context across without actually overtly saying so.
Which I don't think anybody got until he came out.
How?
Right?
How is that possible? How is that possible? I was talking on mixtapes. I was talking about that with them too.
Yeah.
It's like, look at a picture of him. What's wrong with you? But no, but Rush were in like, certainly in a better situation than that by the 70s. But but you still come up against, I'm the artist. I want this to come out this way. And there are people meddling. It wasn't as restrictive as what Rod Serling faced. But they weren't as topical at the time anyway. Like they didn't have any songs at the time about racism. They didn't have any songs at the time about feminism. They didn't go there. But I don't know. I feel like what they were saying about, be yourself first and foremost, be authentic, be true to yourself. In a way, is kind of an umbrella for a lot of those issues because, whatever your political issue is, whatever your thing is, you're going to face opposition. Whatever, like, I don't know, like let's say you really support a capital gains tax cut. Like, let's say that's your political thing. You will meet people who don't think that's a good idea. And wherever you go in life, just liking Rush, you're going to face opposition. And so really, really, to me, it's an album about like you're going to face authority figures, you're going to face conflict, you're all of that. How do you get right within yourself to be able to withstand all that? To me, that's really what I take away from it.
That's the message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Half the world is one of my favorite.
There you go.
No matter where you are, the other half is going to be there.
Yeah, and so what do you do? What is the best way to operate? I mean, for me, writing has been just how I deal with and process a lot of what's going on around me and how I center myself and how I focus myself. That's the thing that I do, when the world is scary or doing stuff I don't like, I can always lose myself in my writing.
That's it. Same with me with the podcast and reading these books by all these great authors like yourself. And
I mean, it gives you
everything
falls
a nice by the wayside.
Yeah, it gives you a nice little respite from all that, all that crap.
The madness.
The madness, yeah. And I don't know. It's I guess I just feel like as long as you're cool within yourself and comfortable with yourself, then you're in a better position to deal with whatever is going to come your way. And things are going to come your way. And I think in 2112, I don't think it suggests either that you're ever going to defeat that or that there will ever be an end to crappy circumstances.
That's the message of Buddhism.
Right.
That accept things, that there's good, there's bad. They're always going to be there. And
I am not religious or spiritual in any way, but one of the things I took from the I Ching is that it's basically saying you have all this energy out there. Sometimes there's too much. So when bad things happen, it has to be corrected. And what you go through in life that's negative is really just energy being corrected because it's out of balance. And again, you look at that and it's like, okay, well, then what does that mean for me as the individual? And the lesson again is just be right within yourself and sure of how you want to be. And when these corrections happen, just hang on and, be the best you can be.
And Lessons is the next song.
Yes.
Perfect segue. Alex Lifeson wrote the music and lyrics to Lessons. You write in the book, quote, Lessons is one of two songs on 2112 with music and lyrics written entirely by a single band member. That song and the Lee-penned Tears, which follows this, represented the first two times this had ever occurred in Rush history, and it never happened again. What personal message do you think Alex is expressing in Lessons?
I have my own theory about it, which is not supported by any evidence, but it seems that way to me. There is this documentary that he appears in as a 17-year-old. And at one point in it, he's at a table talking to his father, saying that he wants to drop out of school and just play music full time. And his father, like, I wouldn't say like necessarily lays into him, but his father makes some kind of hurtful comments that you can just see on Alex's face that it kind of wounded him. And to me, that part of the song, when Geddy is singing "You Didn't Listen Again," and Alex is right behind him, doubling those notes on his guitar, to me, in my opinion, that's him talking to his father. That's him saying to his father, "You didn't listen again."
Wow.
Yeah, I may be completely wrong about that. I may be just projecting 100%.
Or that's your interpretation of it.
Yeah, and Rush have again been kind enough to write it in a way that if that's your interpretation, then that's your interpretation. And they're not going to come correct you or anything like that.
Tears feels unusually vulnerable. What side of Geddy Lee are we seeing here?
Specifically, just he loved his wife and didn't want to be away from her all the time touring. And it's really about that. And just what a hard time he had, finding balance. Because I mean, especially at that time, if you're a touring musician, you're gone 300 days out of the year. You are not at home. And he talked about some stretches that they did where they would have like 20 nights in a row. It was crazy. And I can just see how in the middle of all of that, all you want is just to be in some kind of familiar surroundings with people you love and just to stay there for a little bit and maybe get some quiet too while you're at it. But at the same time, this was everything they were working for, and this was everything they wanted. So, like, on the one hand, all their dreams are coming true and they're getting more popular and the seats are filling and all that sort of thing. But he misses his wife. And it's just as simple as that, I have these two things in my life that I treasure. How do I balance them? How do I make it so that I am getting everything I want out of my music career and achieving all the goals that I want and still, having, a fulfilling relationship with my wife.
Very anti-rock star.
Yeah, well, I mean, all three of them were, yeah, they were, I think if they weren't in an industry that, requires that you have to tour, I think they would have been perfectly happy to be like stay-at-home dudes. Neil especially, because he could get even more reading done that way.
Yeah, there won't
But
be a Rush the Dirt movie. They did
you
not
will
live
never
that
see it.
lifestyle.
And
Groupies.
even if they put it out, you'll be flipping through it like, where is it?
Yeah.
Where's the dirt? I'm looking for. They weren't like that.
No.
Their priority, and so much of what I love about them was just the music. That's it. That's all they wanted to be judged on. That was the standard. And I think they felt like everything that was not the music was just kind of like extra. And they didn't, I know they didn't like doing videos, but they felt like they had to because that was just a demand of the industry at the time.
Sure.
But to them, it had nothing to do with what they were interested in, which was finding, cool new sounds and how can we push what we do. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted to do. But that may be, 2112 probably even applied to them 10 years later, during like the power Windows era when, it's all synthesizers and they've got videos on MTV and they're doing a lot of stuff, I mean, with the videos specifically and dressing a certain way and all that I cannot imagine was their idea. I just don't think they care about that at all. They cared about the music. They cared about writing the best song. They cared about the sound of it and everything. But I think they felt like everything, like all the stardom stuff, I think they just had no use for that at all. And
I wonder if it was an exchange between them and the label. Hey, you guys, I'll let you do whatever you want musically, but you got to just help us out here. Just dress up in these fancy schmancy outfits and poof your hair up a little bit and do some videos for us. All right.
once you get to a certain level of success, and they certainly reached it with moving pictures, you just get a lot of people, like industry people, whispering in your ear that you have to do this and you have to do this. And you can sit there and be like, all of that is ridiculous. But there will be so much of it. There will be so much of that unsolicited advice that I think eventually it'll just wear you down to the point where you're like, all right, fine.
Right.
I'll wear the big shoulder pads. Can you just go away
Yeah.
now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and honestly, I think some decisions that they made in their later years may have been, okay, fine, we'll do that. Just shut up. Just stop talking to us.
Yeah.
you
And then
know?
once they got out of that decade, the 80s, they could just go back to being what they really want it to be. They kind
Yeah.
of get that sense in the 90s. So you did talk about the last song, Something for Nothing. Perfect way to end the album. It's about self-determination. Right? I mean, this is, again, what we're talking about right now. This is already what we're discussing here. But if you want something, you got to go out and make it happen.
Yeah.
So is this the thesis statement that explains everything the album is trying to say? Like you say, it wraps everything up perfectly.
I kind of feel like it, I mean, there's this, I've said this on many podcasts. I'm going to repeat myself. I am sorry. There's that bit of lyrics there. What you own is your own kingdom. What you do is your own glory. What you love is your own power. What you live is your own story. That is the 2112 story right there. And those are just 4 lines of lyrics that I have taken for myself as this is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to live my life. And part of what that means is you are on your own. There, one thing that Neil said about it that I thought was very interesting is, there's the line in it, you can't have freedom for free. And freedom, I think a lot of us interpret that word as like, we can do anything, free candy for everybody, do whatever you want. But freedom is also like, there's like the comforts of home are not there. The independence is very lonely. And if you're fighting for the freedom to be yourself, you're going to be alone in that fight. So, I mean, it really demonstrates that, like, it's a double-edged sword. But if it's important to you to live authentically and do what matters to you, you will bear that. And you will be willing to kind of go through the loneliness and the feeling of like, is anyone going to help me if it's important enough, if the goal is important enough? I mean, just for me, those lyrics have so much meaning and have guided me for decades. And I mean, like right now, what I'm doing, just trying to make a living as a writer, is very much informed by those lyrics. Because it also sort of frees me from having to say, like, if I sell, I don't know, 100,000 copies, then I'm a writer. And that's sort of looking for validation from the outside world. Those lyrics say, no, you're a writer because you say you're a writer, and that's enough. So go do it and do the best you can. And you're doing it right now with your show. This matters to you, and I'm assuming not getting $1 million checks every day.
Nope. Just breaking even at the end of the month. I got a day job. This is what I do when I come home after work. But sometimes I'll get caught up in the numbers, and then I'm like, wait a minute.
But it matters to you, and that's the point. You wouldn't do it if it didn't. And I'm sure in the back of your mind, there's even the thought of like, this may never get past the break-even point, but I will still do it because this means everything to me.
Yeah, nothing's going to stop you.
No, not if it matters. Not if you love what you do. And if you commit yourself to doing what you love, then it's easy. And then it's not a decision. It's just that's the North Star. That's what we follow.
Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. Last question. If you had to explain to a young listener why 2112 still matters 50 years later, what would you tell them?
I wouldn't actually. I would just put it on and let them just hear it. And usually by the time it gets to that bit in Overture, it's an acoustic, it's like a rhythm acoustic guitar going dun 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 dun. There are so many people I've seen hear that for the first time and just their eyes bug out.
Mm-hmm. Game over. You're in.
You can just see they're sold. Right.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly. And if you just get them to that point, they'll find the rest on their own, and it is set up for them to find the rest on their own. I also know as a father that if you tell any young person anything, they will ignore you and wait for one of their friends to tell them. So their friends should explain to them why it's an important album. I can just sell them on the first 2 minutes. That's about it.
Yeah, and then you can go out and get this book as well. It's is it out now? March 10. That was the
March
release date. So that's tomorrow. We're recording this on March the 9th. So when this is out, it'll already have been out for a few days. Get it wherever you get your books.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Wherever fine books are sold.
Fine books are sold. We want to thank Motor Books and Steve Roth, as always, for setting this up. And where can people reach out and talk to you, Daniel, about this?
Yeah, my
band?
My website is notoriousbuk.com.
My favorite website name ever.
Thank you. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram under my own name, and because normal channels like that. You will not find me on Twitter.
Okay.
Or X, or whatever they're calling it these days.
All right.
But I'm in all the other normal channels.
Awesome. So, and you got some things in the works, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I have another book coming out this year on November 10th, I believe is the release date. Heavy Metal's Big Four.
Oh, okay.
It's about Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth.
Okay.
And I have something after that too, but I'm not yet at liberty to say what that is.
Well,
Top secret.
I will keep the podcast going just at least long enough to have you back on again for both of them.
There's stuff in the Big Four book that I cannot wait to discuss.
Yeah, cool.
I cannot wait.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool. We'll be in touch on that one. So I look forward. We'll have you back on again for that in October, November, whenever.
We'll make sure you get a book. Absolutely.
All right, Daniel Bukszpan. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you very much.